Okay, good morning. We're up to Mem Vav Amid Beis. We're up to Mem Vav Amid Beis. About 10 lines from the bottom. The Mem Vav Amid Beis, 10 lines from the bottom. Very, very interesting Shaila and Halacha Lamaisa. We're not dealing with killing anymore. We're dealing with a corpse. And Iboiluhu, the following Shaila. Hespeda, the purpose of a hesped is Yikara Dechai. Is it for the covet of the living? In other words, the Ran says that the living should be comforted by the hesped. So the hesped is for the living. Or Yikara Deshachve Have, or is it for the mace? So no, what's the purpose of these levayas? And we have eulogies. Is the eulogies for the purpose of the living, or is the eulogies for the purpose of the mace? L'may nafkamina, the Omar loy taspeduha, b'hu gavra. A person says, I don't want a hesped. A person says, I don't want a hesped. Inami, or else lafuke miyorshim. Go ahead, and they used to have professional safdonim, professional eulogizers. So if it's for the covet of the mace, then they would have to pay for it. But if it's for the covet of themselves, they can say, no, I'm not paying for it. I don't want it. So these are two different nafkaminis in who the hesped's for. If it's for the covet of the mace, then the mace could say, I don't want any hespedim. I don't want any eulogies. If it's for the covet of the people that are there, and in this case the Yarshim, this is why I answered yesterday, Benji, the Yarshim would pay for it, right? If the covet of the Yarshim, then the Yarshim could say, listen, it's for our covet, we'll go ahead and do away with the covet, and we won't bother paying a safta. I'll say the Gemara is going to try. Tashma. By Yavai Avron, Lispoid Lisara, Veliv Kaisa. Avram came. Now, Avram was not there at the time of Sarah's Petira. Right? Avram, Sarah, we say, died as a result of the Akedah. Avram is coming back from the Akedah. He finds out that Sarah is dead, and Sarah had not been buried yet. By Yavai Avram, Lispoid Lisara, Veliv Kaisa. Vi Amit Mishum Yikara Dechai. If you say the purpose is for Avram Avinu, Mishum Yikar da Avram Mashile Sarah, for the covet of Avram will we keep Sarah out. Bishleim is for the covet of Sarah to have Avram there. That we understand why Sarah will be out. We said yesterday, fellas, right? We will leave a person overnight for the more covet, more people coming for Tachrichin, for Hespedim. So therefore, for the person, we can understand if we delayed Sarah, provided it was what? For Sarah's covet, and therefore we can leave Sarah out. But if you're going to tell me what, that is the covet Abraham, we'd leave Sarah out, the covet Abraham. So it must be that what? It's the covet, the mace. Says Gemara, no. Sarah gufa nichalei la ki hechi de miyaka ba Abraham. That Sarah gufa was happy that what Avram would be the hesped, that she's there. Sarah would want Avram to be there. Why? Because it's for Avram's covet, and it's a bigger covet for her to be not buried there than not buried. So in Chanami, it could be the covet of Avraham. Tashma, let's try to push the shail again. Okay, we're speaking about now Aviha, who was the only son of Yeravam that was Zeichet to Kfura, Yeravam ben Nevat, the Rosh Marusha. And he, again, as we spoke about yesterday, he took down the Padisas, he put down the centuries that were not allowing the people to be oil regel. It says, V'savtu lo kol Yisrael, v'kavru Yisrael. These people, they were Shayim. Now, Bishleim, you telling me it's the covet of Aviyah, I understood, and that there was a hesped. But if the hesped's for the covet of who? His family? His family, they were not ready for any covet whatsoever. They were Shayim. It says, it would be good for what? For that they should receive covet through him. So, it could be the covet for them. And it's nicha for Aviyah to go ahead and have a hesped, what for them? Okay. Hashma, and this is by the men of Anasais, the Rishoyim who were shepherding Yirmiyahu. It says, Tashma, la yispedu la kaveru, that they didn't get a hesped and they didn't get buried, right? So what do you see? So it must be that what? That the covet is for the dead. It must be the covet what is for the dead, and therefore we didn't give them a hesped. Because if it's for the living are not Rishayim. So the fact that they didn't go ahead and bury them or give them a hesped, must be it's a cover for the dead. And since the men of Anasais were Mishayim, they're not getting covered. Right? The men of Anasais were Mishayim, so they're not getting covered. Doesn't know. Could be no. Now, maybe it's for the cover of the living, but it's good for the cover of the living that these Rishayim should not get what? Covered. Pashma, and this is speaking by Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, the last melech of Klal Yisrael, the last melech Yehuda. It says, B'shalom Tamus, you will die in peace. Just like they burned the possessions of the previous kings, they'll burn for you your possessions. And it says that you will be maspid you. If you say that the hesped is the cover for the chayim, why should he care? You're telling Tzidkiyahu that, you know what, you'll be zoicha to a hesped. So Bishleim, if it's the cover of Tzidkiyahu, you're comforting him. But if you're telling me that the hesped, the purpose of the hesped is for other people, why would that be a cover to Tzidkiyahu? Right? Bishleim, if it's personal for him, so you're being menachem, you're telling him you're going to be zoicha to a hesped. But if it's for other people, why would he care? This is what the Navi was telling him. Yisrael will be elevated because of you. Just like you were elevated from your father, the people around you will be elevated from you. So then, so far, we have not been pushed to the Shiloh. Again, those people joining, the Shiloh is who the hesped. The purpose of the hesped is for the cover of the mace, the cover of the people who go to the hesped. If it's for the cover of the mace, he could be Michael on it. If it's the cover of the people, that he can't be Michael on it, but they could refuse. They could say, "Listen, it's our cover. We don't want to pay for the safdanim." Those were the two nafkaminas in halacha. We're up to the Amid Aleph now. Okay, this is describing this is describing Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu had a father Achaz who was a Rasha Marusha, big Ovid Avodah Zarah, and Chizkiyahu buried him in a very, very how should we say, a shameful way. So it says the Gemara, Tashma. The pasuk says in Tilm Tesvav, Nivze be'einav nimas. Zeh Chizkiyahu melech Yehuda shegiru atzmos aviv al mita shel chavalim. He went ahead and he schlepped his father's body on, instead of a mita of kavod, on ropes. He slept him on ropes because he was a Rasha and he wasn't chayish for his kavod. Right? If it's for the purpose of the people living and not the individual that's dead, my time up. In other words, l'chayra, by you disgracing achaz, that doesn't help things. Especially if the whole levaya with the saftin is the cover of the mace, so I can understand what you did. But if it's the cover of you, what did you gain by going ahead? Well, it must be that it's for his cover. Says Gemara, kihechi the tavi lekapara lavua. In other words, it is covered for him. By doing this, his father's going to get a kapara. By him going ahead and not, in other words, the cover is for you. For the cover of you, what are you gaining by treating your father in this derogatory, shameful way? That the father should get a kapara. Says kapara davua mashalahu lekar Yisrael. Where do you have a right to go ahead your father should get a kapara to go ahead and nem away from the cover of Yisrael? After all, the king is representative of the people. So who are you to go ahead and treat him this way if it's for the cover of the Jews? It says they're very good, they're very happy. The Yisrael themselves were very happy to be Michael the covered that he should get a kapara. If Michael the covered that she should get a kapara. So far we haven't been poishit the shaila. So far we haven't been poishit the shaila whether the purpose of a levaya, the purpose of a hesped, is for the cover of the mace or for the cover of the individuals. Nasim, we're on Mem Zayin Amid Aleph, Toshma, right at the beginning. And we're trying to be Paisha the Shaila, the hesped, is for the cover of the mace or the cover of the people attending. Toshma. Now this is speaking about Rebbe. The Gemara at the end of Kesubis describes Rebbe's levaya. So Rebbe told his sons before he died, Al tispeduni ba'ayaris. I don't want a hesped in small cities. I want the hesped be in a big shtat, in a big city. Be amit yikor dechai my naflamina. Bishleim, if it's the covet of Rabbi can say where he wants the hesper to take place. But if it's for the covet of the people, what difference does the place take? Difference does it make where they get the covet, whether they get it in a small shtetl or in a large city? And for the Gemara, if there's more covet, what if there's more people? If there's more people, it means more covet. So Einachinami is for the covet of Yisrael. In a larger city, it will be more covet than Yisrael than a small shtetl. So far, we still have not been pushed to the shaila, whether it's for the covet of the mace or the covet of people. Tashma, our Mishnah, Helinoi Lichvoidoi, you left the mace out overnight. Why? Lahavila Arin, to being an Arin. V'tachrichin, to being shrouds. Eina over love. You're not over the loisasei of loisalin of lasai. My love, l'chvayda shalmeis. It must be that you're bringing the chad. Now, it doesn't say hesped over here, fellas, but I assume that if the covet of you're leaving it out for the covet of the Arin, leaving it out for his covet, all the aspects of the levaya must be for his covet. So you're not supposed to leave him out overnight, right? It's a bizoyin, ki covet tikvareni. You're supposed to bury him. However, if it's for his covet, you'll leave him out overnight. So we see l'chayr hakpadavat is his covet. Memela, we can extend it and say the hesped, the eulogies, is also for his covet. So let's bring a raya from a Mishnah to be paisher ashayla that the reason why we go ahead and do espedim is for the covet of the mace. My love l'chovet shalmeis, loy l'chvayda shalchai. We leave it out. The covet that we should bet the people around should get covered that he's being buried with tachrichin and being buried with a hesped and being buried with an arin. Says the Gemara, and because the covet of the chai will mavis, Rashi says is Aramaic, is targum of leaving him out overnight. Just because of that, will we go ahead and because of that, will we leave him out overnight? Just for that reason, Mavis will we go ahead and leave him out overnight? That doesn't appear to be the right thing to do. Just for his covet, we should leave him out. Says the Gemara Vaita. For the covet of the people, we will leave it out overnight. Kiyam Rachmana like Solon of Lasay ala Eitz, Dumya the Toli, the Isba Bizayan. That's when you don't leave it out. Aval Hacha Kim the Lesba Bizayan, where you're going out and leaving him out not because of Bizayan. In other words, we're redefining leaving out a mace. If you leave out a body that was hung up because they were chayiv skila, to leave that body out would be a bizayin. But to leave a body out when there's not a bizayin, such as to bring an arin, such as to bring hespedim, such as to bring tachrichim, in that case, einachinami, we would go ahead, we would leave it out, even though it has nothing to do with the mace. It has to do with the people there. Keeping the less baby Zion, when they leave it out for the covet of the people, loy, there's no issa. So therefore you weren't placed to the shaila yet. Tashma, Helinu lechvoidoi, lishmoya alav, you went ahead and left them out for time lishmoya alav, that people should gather. Lishmoya means to hear and come. That people should gather from the ayaros, or to bring people to be masked, that people who be, the women, they would they would go like the Svardim, they keen. It's called keening. In Yiddish, it's called keening, but this is the source for it. Right, Kenny? Okay, we got the up from Kenny. Good. Now, lahavi loy arin v'tachrichin eina over alav basalim shekola oisa eina el chavit shel meis. So l'chayra, obviously, it said openly, guys. The whole reason you're doing this is for the covet of the mace. So l'chayra, we keep paishet ashayla, covet on mace. The whole purpose of the eulogy is the covet of mace. Says going no, hachi kamar. Kol ois l'chvoy doi shel chai. Hear the words. Kol ois l'chvoy doi shel chai. Ain boy bizoyin lemeis. Anything that's done for the cover of the people who are there is not a bizoyin lemeis. So if we cut and paste like that, you don't have a raya. Okay, guys, here's the final raya. Here's the final raya. Toshma, Reb Nassan Oimer, simin yafa lemeis, shenefroyim mimenu la'achamisa. It's a simin yaf for a mace that they're paying back after he dies. Mace shalei nispid v'lei nikvar. A mace that didn't get a hesped, a mace that wasn't buried according to his covet, a shechaya garasai, or was slept away by a chaya, a shechaya geshamim mizalfin al mitasai, or it was raining on him. Zes simin yafal a mace. That's a good thing. Shemamino yikor de shachvehu. In other words, it's much better to get paid back in this world. Whatever suffering you're going to do in this world is going to save you a lot of suffering for the next world. So here you have this guy is dead. There's a small window before he gets to go to the next world. So if in that small window there's a bizoyin that happens to him, in that small window there's a bizoyin that happens to him, then what? Then it's a good thing. Why do you see? All this is because the covet of the mace. There's nothing to do with the people around him. Let's see the lashon again, guys. Tashma, Reb Nassan Oimer, simin yafal a mace, shenefroim mimenu la'achamisa. It's a simin yafal for the mace to be paid back after misa. Mace shalei nisbad v'lei nikvar. A mace that didn't get a hesped or was not buried lefi kvaydai. Doesn't mean not buried at all, but he wasn't buried in the right way. Or a chaya is going ahead schlepping him away. Or it's raining. Why? Because he's getting his kapara here and now. Shmamina, yikor the shachvehu. Shmamina, it's yakar of what of the person that dies. So a hesped is part of the covet of the mace. Shmamina, you have a good raya. Shmamina, you have a good raya. L'chein, if a person leaves in his tzava that he doesn't want what? A hesped. If he doesn't want a hesped, einachinami, we do not want to go ahead and give a hesped. Now, you've seen people play around with this, right? You've seen people say they don't want a hesped, and then people say things, but not necessarily, we'll only say dvarim, it's a very hard thing to do. It's a very, very hard thing to do. So there's a famous, I heard from Sully Bornstein, he said, very interesting. The Pnei Yeshua left in his tzava that he doesn't want a hesped. Pnei Yeshua left in his tzava, he doesn't want a hesped. The Noid of Yehuda paskined, and he gave him a hesped. He paskined that the Torah that is not going to be in the world anymore because of his patira, he didn't have what shlita over to go ahead and say he's Michael. The Torah that now that the Pnei Yeshua is gone, that Torah that would have been in the world, he said in Noid of Yehuda that he did not have the right to go ahead. So he was maspid that Torah. So again, there are parameters for being makel over here, but the bottom line is the whole reason for levaya is giving covet achroin to the person, not to the people. This shaila is poishit. This shaila is nifshat. The whole purpose of levaya is for the purpose of now. Therefore, if that's the case, we see throughout history sometimes things really, really, really didn't work out. Sometimes things really didn't work out. I just remember the Gemara. I'm going to share with you. Okay, listen to this is in Yeshua. They buried him, Yeshua, in the Grenitz of his Nachla, Betimnas Serach, Asher Bahar Ephraim, Mitzvoin Lahar Goash. They buried him in Har Ephraim to the north of literally, Har Goash means the mountain of Goash. That's where they buried him. Listen to this Gemara. Says the Gemara. Vayikbu Esai mitzvoin lahar goash, Omer breche chazarnu al kol hamikra, lemetzinu makom sheshmo goyash. I didn't find such a place. Umahu ha goash, al yedei shenis atzul Yisrael me'asois gemilas chasadim Yeshua, since they were lazy when it came to do gemilas chesed with Yeshua with his burial, ba'oisa shah nechalka Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael was divided up. V'hoisa chaluka chaviva alayim yosim idai. V'Yisrael oiskim b'malachtan. Zo oisik b'sadeu. This is not the Gemara I wanted. I'm reading you a nice thing, but it's not. It's not what I wanted. Rabbi Yehuda Rav. Kol ha'misatzel behespeda shel chacham. Anyone is lazy when it comes to the hesped of a chacham. Roy l'kovrei b'chayav should be buried alive. Shenemar vayikroy soy mitzvos lahar goash melamed shegorash aleim har lahargon. It was the volcano, guys. Goash, har goash. What happened was that this mountain erupted. Since they weren't given, this place didn't exist. And it's called Har Goash. Why? Since they give in mehesped, right? Ad kadei kach. That, in other words, I think to say, since it's that person's covered, he could be meichel on his covered, but we can't. You know, we have to do what you have to do. He could say whatever he wants, and if you don't want a hesped, he doesn't want a hesped, but not to go to the levaya, or it says, or you yourself not to be masped him. In other words, they paid him. They make us pay for dead people, right? You have a shloishim, you have people speak about him. That is not totally in his mechila. That a person has to do. And if you're lazy when it comes to that, chas v'shalom, Yeroi says the Gemara in Shabbos to be buried alive. Har gosh, the mountain was going to cover them with the lava. That's what they state. Yeshua Chavdalid, Bayik Shabbos Hey, Daf Hey. Okay, this is very geschmack. So we were pushing that shaila. Now, Lahaya Koivrim, they didn't bury. We said, guys, they buried the person's skila. There were two cemeteries: the skila Sreifa cemetery and the Chenek Hariga cemetery. They would bury them, but not permanently until Nisachlu Abasar, and then they would go ahead and take the bones and put it in the family crypt. The Kokach Lama. Why did they have to bury that? Why didn't they bury directly in the crypt? Why do they have to go through all of this? Because you can't go ahead and bury a Rushal next to a tzaddik. So the fathers were tzaddikim. This guy was he received skila, and therefore we're not going to bury him next to a tzaddik. The Amr Rav Bar Chanina, minayin shein koivrim Moshe etzel tzaddik. How do you know? Shneimar. Listen to this pasuk. Vayehi, and it was. Heim koivrim. They were being koiveya ish. He was a Russia. This person. When they row as a gedud, they saw the gedud of Moav coming. They saw a band of soldiers of Moav. Vayashlichu as a ish bekever Elisha. They threw. There was a kever. There was a catacombs there. They threw it down. They didn't know where it was, but it happened to be the kever of Elisha and Navi. Vayelech, and this person went down. Vayiga ish ba'atzmas Elisha, and this person touched the bones of Elisha. Vayechi, he was brought back to life. Vayakam al raglav, and he walked away. So what do you see? Why did he walk away? Because you didn't want a Russia to be buried next to a tzaddik. This guy was a Russia. He wasn't royal Tchias Mason, as we'll see in a second. Simply what? He touched Elisha and he walked away. Why? Because Russia can't be what? In the kever of a tzaddik. L'chayr, a great raya. That's why you can't have a Russia in the kever of a tzaddik. Vayiga ish ba'atzmas Elisha, vayichi, vayakam al raglav. Amalei Papa, v'dilma l'kiyume. Maybe the purpose why he walked away alive was to makayim the words of Elisha. What did Elisha say? Vayihi ka'avram velio amar Elisha sha'almo eselcha b'terem elakach mi'imach vayem Elisha v'hina pishnayim bruchacha Eloi. I should bring two people back to life. You brought one Eliyahu. I should be zoichet to two. So Elisha brought back the Shunamis, brought back the child of the Shunamis. Correct? Was that Chavakuk? Yeah, Baruch saying it's Chavakuk. He brought Chavakuk back to life, and L'chayra, this is the second one. How do you know it's because why? Your Rosh is not supposed to be near a tzaddik, and that's why he walked away. Ken Zayin, this is the kiyum of the second one. He should keep alive. Vayihina na pishnayim bruchacha Eloi. Amalei ihachi hainu detanya al raglav amad ulebeis halach. It said he stood up on his feet and walked away, but he never made it home. If this was supposed to be bringing him back to life, fellas, then he should have kept on living. All simply happened was this dead guy fell in the pit, touched Elisha, walked out, and dropped dead. So he shouldn't be near Elisha. So l'chayra, that can't mean that to be brought back to life. So where's the second time we find Elisha brings someone back to life? Says Gemara, the Mishkachas the Achya, Amalei Rabbi Yochanan, Sheripa Tsaras Naaman, Shehi Shekula Kemes. We know that a person who has tsaras is one of the four people. It's like a mace, a poor person in Labanim. So he doesn't have he's considered dead, right? So therefore, since he cured his tsaras. He said, "I'll give you anything," and he gave him thing. And afterwards, we'll meet kechazi. We're going to do him perichelek. But anyway, so maybe that's where he brought him back to life. The chsiv al nati kames okay, very good. So therefore. That's your raya. Says Gemara, Kashem Shein Kavin Rasha Eitzel Tzadik, Kachin Kavin Rasha Chomer Eitzel Rasha Kal. By the Kasha, guys. So you just told me that a Rasha can't be buried next to a Tzadik, so he can't be buried in his father's kever. Why were there two separate cemeteries? Why was there separate cemeteries for Sreifa Skila and for Herachenek? Why? So we're saying. And just like you can't be a Rasha, can't be buried next to a tzaddik, so too a Rasha Chomer cannot be buried next to a Rasha Kal. So Rasha Chomer, those people who chayiv skila and sreifa, can't be buried next to what? Can't be buried next to the ones who chayiv chenek and chayiv hereg, because that's Kal. Fred Gemara v'liskin arba kvarois, right? Why two cemeteries, not four cemeteries? After all, guys. After all, each one is more chomer than the next. In other words, if you're telling me the two easier ones connected to two chomerdika ones, there's no such thing as two chomer. There's a one, there's a two, there's a three, and a four. So you're telling me 1 and 2 on one side, 3 and 4 on the other side. I could just as easily say 1 and 2, one is more chomer than the next. It's machloikis, whether streif or skila. So you should have, therefore, if this idea is true, you should have 4 cemeteries. Neither one should be, because each one is more chomer than the next. So let's say 1 is more chomer than 2, and 3 is more chomer than 4. So they shouldn't be buried together. That more answer is Shnei Kvaros Gemara can be real. There's 2 and not 4. Ula Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, now we are a totally new sugya, guys. Totally new sugya. Okay, derech hakdama. Primarily in Kachim, we find the concept of dichui, of something is out of the ballpark. There's 2 possibilities. It never was in the ballpark, and later on, at a later time, it became roy to be in the ballpark, or it was in the ballpark, out of the ballpark, and then back in the ballpark. So now, it's much more difficult to go ahead and say that a person who was once in the ballpark and then out, to allow him back in. It's less of a chiddush to say someone who never was in would be allowed in at a different time. So if a person is chayiv a carbon and he separates the carbon, now you have the carbon is totally has kedushas aguf. Now something happens that this carbon is out of the ballpark. Does it go back in or not? If you hold that ein dichui, then it's. But if you hold dichui, then it's out. So that's the discussion we're going to have today. Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Yirmiyah. Amar Rav Yochanan. Amar Ulam Rav Yochanan. Achol chelev. A chelev is a chiyuv karis. Anyone who's chiyuv karis, if he did a b'shogeg, is a chatas. So achol chelev, the hifrish carbon, and he separated the carbon chatas. The hamer, and then he went off the derech. He became a Philadelphia Eagle fan. He mamish went off the derech totally, right? The sue, right? V'chazabai, and then he did tshuva. He became a Jet fan. Okay, he became a Chief fan.
Same colors, Jets and Eagles, same colors.
He became a Chief fan. Okay, so in other words, guys, for all intents and purposes, in the ballpark, out of the ballpark when he went off the derech, and now he's back in the ballpark. Correct? That's the case. Hoyel v'nitche, once he was out, yitche he was out. Once Once he was out, he was out. Itmanami, Rav Yirmi, Rav Avahu, Rav Yechanan, Acha Chelev, the Hifrish carbon, separated his carbon chatas, finished Tata, he became crazy, Hitaka became a jet fan, right? So he lost it. The Chaza Vinishtafa, and then he got back his what? So when he was in the state of being well out of his mind, he's out. He gets better afterwards. Hoyel v'nitche yitche, right? Hoyel v'nitche yitche. So the same thing. Now you're telling me the same halacha, but two separate venues. One when he himself lost it physically, and one where he had control and decided that he doesn't want to be in the ballpark. So now, v'tzricha the Ashmina Kamaisa, the first one where he went off the derech, mishum de'ihu dochen avshei biyadayim. The reason why it's out because he pushed it out. Because he had control, and by saying, I'm no longer interested in Judaism, he pushed it out. And therefore, it doesn't come back in. But over here, where he got sick, and he lost his marbles, and then he came back, I would say, maybe it's similar like going to sleep. You went to sleep. When you wake up, your carbon's still a carbon. So too over here, doesn't say how long he had this for, but how long he had it for, it was like the same thing going to sleep, meaning it wasn't something that he actively did. It happened. Mashmalon that no, once he's out, he's out. Maybe the reason why it's mishum the ein biyad lachsa over there, the reason it's out when he's lost it because it's not in his hands to return because Hashem has to make him better. Masha ein kain where it's in his control to go back on the derech, maybe it's still in Kamashma and it's out. So he told me both cases. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Afana Nami Tanina. Hayuba. This is speaking by Erni Dachas. Hayuba Kachim. In the Erni Dachas, you have to burn all the spoils. So in the city there was Kachim. Kachim is Beach. What do you do with the Karbanos? Yamusu. They die. Kache Bere Kabayas. Thing that had Kedushas Damim. Yiftu. You go ahead and you be paid to them. Vavina Ba. Amaya Musu. Why are you killing the animals that have Kedushas Aguf? Kivin the Ikto. Since their masters are dead, Havile Kapara, they got their Kapara, Velaska Ligvaya, and bring them as Karbanis. So, guys, we're not speaking about a Chatas for Asham. We're speaking about an Oila or a Shlomim. See, Chatas for Asham is the Chi of carbon. If the Baal of the Chatas dies, we know that's one of the Chamesh Chatas Shemesais. Here we're speaking about what? An Oila or a Shlomim. And you're telling me that it dies. What? Why? What are you going to tell me? That the person was a Rasha, right? He was over by the Zara, and he's out of the ballpark. Yeah. Once he's dead, he got his kapara. So if he got his kapara, why can't he go ahead and bring the carbon? It must be what? It must be kivin she yitche nitche. Once he was out, he was out. That's the raya l'chara. Kivin she nitche yitche. Since when the guy was alive, he was a Ovid Avodah Zara, and therefore you could not bring this carbon, even if after his death, and he's got his kapara, you can't bring the carbon. Afananami Tanina, the concept in a Mishnah, the concept of Rabbi Yochanan, who says, Kivin shenitcha yitcha. Very geshmakaraya, guys. Geshmakaraya. Amai, why don't we say, Kivin the ikdal havile kapara, uliske legavoya, Lab mishum darinan hoyel v'nitcha yitchu. Amle Abaya. Abaya says to Rabbi Yosef, misabis meis mitach rishoy havile kapara. Do we say a mace, a person who dies as a rasha, he gets a kapara? In other words, he's questioning his whole premise. Maybe there is no raya. Maybe there is no raya. Maybe the reason why you're not bringing the carbon is because the person bliped a Rasha. Gestorben, he died, and bliped a Rasha, he remains a Rasha. Misabis meis mitach risha havele kapara, meis mitach risha lo havele kapara. The Tani Rebbe Shmaya, let's say you're a Kayin, and it's also Yidin B'tamal HaMesim, afilu pirshu avoisav midarchit tzibur, even if what is right, even if his father is Pirish from the Darchi Tzibur, Yitma, he's Matama to him. Tamaloima, I would think so. Tamaloima ba'amav. What does that mean? Ba'oisei maisav amav. Okay, what's the lashon? What does the pasuk say? It says nothing. The Shema is it's again. What's the he's not quoting a pasuk over here. I'm looking for a pasuk. Hayom Hashem al Moshe, Emer el Kahanim, lenefesh lo yitama ba'amav. Right, this is in Parshas Emor, guys. Nefesh lo yitama ba'amav, ki im l'she'ero ikorav elav. The relatives that are closest to him, Sher is his wife. So what does it say over here? You might think that a kohen whose father or one of his relatives goes off the derech, there will be a mitzvah to go ahead and be mitama. Tamid loima. What does it say? Ba'amav. It says l'nefesh lo yitama ba'amav. Oisa maisav ama. That's someone who goes ahead what and does maisa amav. Somebody goes ahead what and does maisa amav, meaning he died while doing what he's supposed to do. Says Abaya, why do you see the kohen's not metam to his father? You know why? Because his father died in Russia, and it bliped to Russia. Mela, your raya that you want to bring from your nidachas, fellas, is nishkan raya. You want to bring a raya from your nidachas. The reason why you don't bring it is because hoyel nidcha yitcha. No, could be it's still a viable carbon, but the reason you're not bringing it is because even though he's dead, he's a Russia, and you don't bring a Russia's carbon. Again, the two sides of the fence we're playing, fellas, are kiven nidcha yitcha versus what? Versus that the guy doesn't he's not nidcha because he's a Russia. He's a Russia. So
but isn't that a kapara? The bringing the carbon would be a kapara for him.
The carbon is in the dava. A kapara, that's for a kapara you can't bring once the guy's dead. Heshi, that's what I prefaced. Heshi, there are different kabarnas. A guilt offering, an asham, a sin offering, a chatas. That's for a kapara.
Yeah, this is a cut.
An oila, and is in a dava. A person that's dead cannot bring a carbon. Heshi. That's I preface. That's one of the five chatas shemesis. One of them is chatas shemesis ba'aleha. Gedenks. So now, very geschmack. So you're speaking about a carbon that you're going to kill the carbon. Why are you killing the carbon? We want to say hoyel shenitcha yitcha, and it can't be because why the guy was a Russia because he got his kapara. Says Abaya, how do you know that? How do you know that? Maybe the Erni Dachas died, and the reason you're not bringing the carbon is because he's a Russia. And I'll prove it to you when a person dies, they remain a Russia. Where do we prove it from? A kohen. A kohen's not being mitama to what? His father who went off the derech. If you're going to tell me when you go off the derech and you get buried, you get a kapara, then he should be able to be mitama to him. But you see not. So memela, you have no raya from your nidachas. It's not because hoyel nitche yitche, it's because the guy applied to Russia. That's the dialogue till now. It's Kishmaka, it's the Lamda Shigamara. Okay? Tamalim ba'amav, ba'isam amav. Amalei Rava. Now Rava comes to say no. Rava is going to say no, it is a good raya. Mikom edamis neherag b'toich rishoy lemeis mitoich rishoy. How can you, a person that was killed for a person that died naturally? Meis mitoich rishoy kivin lechi urcha kamayis lehavale kapara. Nerag mitoich rishoy kivin the lav ki urche mayis havale kapara. Oh, guys, eye contact. What are we comparing over here? We're comparing Erni Dachas to a kohen. Erni Dachas was saying you don't bring the carbon. Why? We wanted to say because why? Because Hoyel Nitcha Yitcha. No, really, it's because he's still a Russia, and he doesn't have his kapara. What's the raya? He doesn't have a kapara because the Kohen's father that goes off the derech, who's a Russia, dies a Russia. He's not matama. So what do you see? As a Russia and as a Russia, but you have no raya to Hoyel Nitcha Yitcha. Says Rava, you do have a raya. There's a big difference between this guy and this guy. How did he die? Naturally. He died a natural death. Dying a natural death is not a kapara. Memela, you can't be matamet to him. Over here, he was killed. Since he was killed, the action is like Arba Mrs. Bezdin, guys, right? When you get Mrs. Bezdin, there's a kapara. So Memela, really you should bring the carbon since he's not a Russia anymore. The whole reason you don't bring it is Hoyel Nitcha Yitcha. Because we're saying it's not the same. This guy dies, is not a kapara, right? This guy dies, it is a kapara because he dies through Arba Mrs. Bezdin. He's dying through Hereg. Teda, and I'll bring you a raya. D'chsiv. Now David HaMelech is singing about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, right? Imagine, Beis HaMikdash was built after David, but he's singing about its destruction. He's singing about it. Not a kina, mizma lahasiv. Because why? Why? Because David knew that it's much better for Hashem to take out his anger on Eitzim Vavonim to take it out on people. The destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, as bad as it was, to us it's a good thing. It would be much worse for the Jews had the Beis HaMikdash not been destroyed. So what does David say over here? Mizma la'asav, Elohim, boyu goyim b'nachlasecha, timu es hechel katshecha, samu es Yerushalayim le'iyim. They made Yerushalayim right into, I'm reading the whole pasuk, into a pile. Nasnu es nivlas avodecha, Michael Oif, gave the nevela of your servants to the birds of prey, Hashemayim, and Besar Chasidecha l'chayis aretz, and the Besar of your Chasidim to the chayis aretz. So we have two people being described over here, Avodecha and Chasadecha. Good? Says the Gemara. My Avodecha, my Chasadecha, Lav Chasidecha, Chasidecha mamish, Avodecha, Hainu de Mechayev Dina de Meikara, the kivan the ikdol, and since they're being killed, karili avadecha. So you see that death is the kapara. If death is the kapara, then why don't we bring the karbanis by the erni dachas? It must be kivan the nitcha yitcha. You have a very good raya. Yeah, guys, I'm trying to keep the paper trail, right? Going back, the whole purpose of this is hayel v'nitcha yitcha. No, that's really so now. Once you're telling me they called avadecha, even though they went off. We see it, they're being killed, they're avodim. Memela, the whole reason by Erni Dachas that you don't bring the carbon, it can't be because they don't get a kapara. Because since they're being killed, they do get a kapara. We don't bring the carbon ashim, shlamim. Why? Because of Hoyel Yitcha. Once they're out, they're out. Amalei Abaya, mi kamedamis on the base, haruge malchus, haruge bezdin. How can you compare haruge malchus like ones who killed for avodah zara to haruge bezdin? The Erni Dachas. Haruge Malchus, keeping the Shaloi Bedin Kamakli, since Haruge Malchus, since they weren't killed correctly, Havale Kapara. They weren't supposed to be killed and they were killed. Haruge Bezdin, keeping the Bedin Kamakli, since they correctly were killed, like Havale Kapara wasn't a Kapara. So therefore, you don't have a Raya. Erni Dachas, since they were killed correctly, they shouldn't get a Kapara. Teda, that Nan Lehoya Koivim Myself Bikfaras of Isav, they didn't bury them in what? In the kavaras of their fathers. We're talking about our Mishnah, right? In our Mishnah, they bury him in the. You're always wondering how it gets back when the Gemara goes off. It always has to get back to our Mishnah somehow, or else by bringing it in. Our Mishnah says they didn't bring him in the kever of the father. Why not? If they get the kapara by getting killed, you should have been buried in the kever of the father. What do you see? Someone was killed by Bezdin. Right? It's not a kapara. Memela Erni Dachas was killed by Bezdin. Memela, it's not a kapara. And Memela, therefore, what? The whole reason that's the reason you have no raya. Hoyel v'nitcha yitcha. Could be why they can't get a kapara. Says the Gemara. Let him be buried what? In the kever of the father. And the Gemara says misu kfura b'inen. You need misa and kfura. You need misa and kfura, and they didn't have misa. I guess they were killed. So you need misa and kfura beinin, misa and kfura beinin. At least 1 second. So let me rephrase. So you want to say that Haruge Malchus, people killed by the Goyim, as a Mizmal Asov, they get their kapara and they can be called Abadecha. But Haruge Bezdin, that are the din is they're supposed to die. Memela, their death is what? Is not a kapara. The death is not a kapara. So since the death is not kapara, that's why you do not bring the carbon. Not because hoyel nitcha v'yitcha, but because they're rishayim. Because they're rishayim. Says the Gemara, it must be, so our Mishnah, Teda from our Mishnah, that they didn't bury the ones that were killed by Bezdin, they didn't bury them with their father. Now, if they got a kapara, they should bury them with their father, right? So the Gemara answers, you have no raya. You have no raya because maybe you need misa ukfura. The Ansher Nidachas, after they were killed and buried, it's possible to bring their kabbanis, right? If not, v'hoyel nitchiyitcha. Masha'en came by us, right? In order, they didn't bury them. Why? Because they didn't die. They didn't, you can't bury them since they weren't killed yet. I'm not a little clear over here. I'm missing something. Rashi says, misu kvur binin, in nikburu mechaperes misason. You need the kfura. Okay. There's a difference between Aaron Nidachas and our Mishnah. An Aaron Nidachas, once they're killed, they're killed. And maybe at that time they get the kapara. So why can't you bring the karbonis? Kasha, our Mishnah says, if you get killed, l'chayra, you get killed, you're off the hook. Our Mishnah maybe needs, besides Misa, you need Kfura. Besides Misa, you need Kfura. And since as of yet you weren't buried, you didn't get your kapara. Mamela, you can't be buried in your father's yet. Since you didn't get the Kfura, our Mishnah to be buried with, in other words, what's the kasha? Once you're dead, be buried with the father because the death is a kapara. Our Mishnah, the death alone is not a kapara. By Aaron Nidachas, the death alone is a kapara. By us, the death alone is not a kapara. You need kfura also. So, Einachinami, based upon where we're holding right now, the whole reason why you don't bring the carbon by Aaron Nidachas is because hoyel v'nitcha yitcha. Okay, that's what we could say right now. So Moisiv Rav Ada Bar Ava, you're telling me that Haruge Bezdin, after the kavura, that they get a kapara. But one second, what does it say? Moisiv Rav Ada Bar Ava, lehoyi misablim, there would be no any avelis. El oinanin, shein aninis el belev. Aninis is beliefs, but you couldn't have any outright signs of avelis. V'isal kedaitach. Even the ikbor havile kapara. If you tell me once he dies and he's buried, it's a good kapara. La avlu, right? You should have availus. What are we saying now, guys? Outside. What are we saying now? Eye contact. We said that Ernidachas, the killing alone, is what? Is a kapara. Therefore, the whole reason you don't bring the karbonis is hoyel v'nitcha yitcha. What you want to bring a raya from us? We're not no raya because you need two things. They get killed and you need burial. Fred the Gemara, if you need burial to get a kapara, so once they're buried, you should be able to misabel over them. What's wrong? Right now, you have these. They're tzaddikim now. I mean, I should tzaddik. They're finally hidden. They're finally hidden. They died through Bezdin. They got buried. So why is there no avelis? That's the Gemara's kasha. So Amar Avada Ava. Lahoy misablam el oinanin. Shein aninis el beleif. Visal ketaita kivin ikbor havle kapara laavlo. And for the Gemara being a nami ichel basar, it's not enough to be buried. You need a mat to be consumed. They can nami the tani nechsachal abasa then meklakan esat samais for carbon asaidim kaimam. Once nisachal. So in other words, the reason why you're not misabel because it's not enough dying, it's not enough burying. You need some decomposition of the mace, and as long as it doesn't decompose, you can't go out and be misabel. Shmamino, it's a good raya. Shmamino, it's a good raya. So l'chayra right now, fellas, we were pushed to the shaila. In our attempt, our questions on Rav Yochanan's din, we have not been successful in saying. In other words, Anshe, they were Rishoyim. They had the kapara. In other words, once they got killed, they got their kapara by any dachas. And the whole reason we didn't bring it is hoil v'nitchi yitcha. I think that's the conclusion of our Gemara. Rav Ashi Yama Avelis Meimasayka Mascheles. When does Avelis begin? Mistimis Hagoylol. So this machloikis guys zolvisen throughout Shas what a goylol is. Rashi says it's the covering of the kever. Rabbeinu Tam says it's the tzion. It's brought over here all the time. All the time it's brought over here. Rashi says it's the goylol on top of the kever, and he says what it is it's the tzion. So says the Gemara, at which time is Avelis start? When the goylol is finished. Kapara me'emasai kahave kichazit saira the kavra porta. When you see a little bit in the kever, a little again, the pain starts in the kever a little bit. Hilka choyel ve'itcha yitcha. Since what? Choyel ve'itcha. Since what? It's out. It's out. Once you're out, you're out. Meaning. Guys, look at me. You want to know why, if there's a kapara is a kapara after misa, and there's kapara, how come you're not misabel? Now what happens? You put the kever down. There's a chiyuv of his. There's a chiyuv to stop being misabel, right? Then it begins to disintegrate. At the time it puts down, as of yet, you don't have a kapara yet. When does the kapara begin? Beginning of the disintegration. So since at the time when you put the kever down, you could be misabel, kivin shenitcha, since you were out at that time, yitcha, even when the time comes that you could be misabel, when the flesh begins to decompose. That's the pshat over here. Okay? Says Rashi. Hoyel v'nitchu, shloi nirulis abel b'shas hascholis avelis. Since you could not be misabel at the beginning of the avelis, when the goyel was doifik, yitchu afla achamikan, then even when the chiyuv comes, you should go ahead and you're pushed off. V'afagav the gabe koiver es mesai beregel, even though when it comes to burying on Rosh Chodesh, not Rosh Chodesh, on Chalamoid, Tanan, Moina Shiva Acha Regel. Why don't we say Hoyel v'yitcha? Guys, why don't we say once? In other words, we know that if the mace died before and you do a little bit, you're out. But we don't Chalamoid l'chayra. Why don't you say the same thing? Since you start, you shouldn't be able to start. V'yamina Hoyel v'yitcha. Hasam le'itcha l'hu legamri. Shay iskei rabim noig beregel. Shem menachem ma'isay kol regel. They would be menachem kidamir and hasam kol shem mishum iskei rabim ain't a regel mafsikasa. In other words, since there's a bit of a veilus, it wasn't like you never stopped, and therefore you could start again. Okay, so again, what's the conclusion of the Gemara? The Gemara wants to say over here that the beginning, when a person dies, when you put the kever down on him, there's the chiv of avelis, but you can't have avelis yet because the person was a rasha. He's only getting his kapara then when it begins to misabel. Since at that point in time, you should start up again. Hoyel v'nitcha at the beginning, when you close the kever, yitcha, you're out. That's the statement of Rav Ashi. One more time. Rav Ashi Amar, Avelis me'emasai mascheles, mistimas hagoylo. Kapara me'emasai kohave, mikichazit sayre de kavra porta. Hilka choyel ve'itchu, since it's out, you could be misabel at the beginning when you close the kever, yitchu, you're out. Ihachi lamale ikol basa, therefore why do you need ikol basa at all? Mishum delay efsha. Right? Because why? Because it's not possible. if you're telling me that when Bezdin kills somebody, the kapara begins, right, after the kfura, why do you have to wait for Ikal Basar? Why can't you bury him in his father's kever right away? When it says Mishum D'Lo, it's not possible. In other words, you have to wait. You know what's going to happen? You're going to open up the kever, he's going to begin to be decomposed. It's not possible. So you might as wait till everything is gone and you just have bones. Says the Gemara the following story. Kivrei de Rav, the kever of Rav, have a shakli mine afra la ishta bas yoima. The kever of Rav, they would take, there was a person had fever, it seems the offer from the kever of Rav could cure that fever. And the question is it mutter bahana to go ahead and use that offer? Asu amrlei l'Shmuel, they came and told Shmuel, who was a doctor, what they were doing to the kever of Rav. Amrlu Shmuel told him, Yasavdan, they're doing fine. Why? Because karka olam hu, the afer of the karka is considered karka olam, the karka olam ain't an eseres, and the karka olam is not asu bahana. The chsiv, it says by the Asherah, vayishlach es afora al kever b'nei am. It says by Yoshiyahu Amelech, who was a tremendous tzaddik. It said they took the afer of the Asherah and they threw it al kever b'nei am. Makish kever b'nei am la'avodas kechavim. Avodas kechavim the mechuba le mitzra, when it's attached to the ground, it's not aser. The chsiv asher atem yoshim oisam es alayhem al ha'orim haramim al ha'orim Elohim. The gods that are on the mountains, v'lo ha'orim Elohim, but the mountains themselves are not gods. The mountains themselves are connected. They're not gods. Hachanami. So therefore, Rav's kever will consider the offer mechuber. Hachanami mechuber le mitzra, and therefore the afer Rav's kever we'll consider mechuber, and therefore it's not asa b'hana. Meisavei hachoitziv kever la'aviv. Someone goes ahead and cuts out a kever for his father. V'holach v'kavro b'makam acher, and he buries him in another spot. Harizel lo yikaver. I love this. You shouldn't go ahead and use that kever at all, because l'chayr it's asa b'hana. Hachamayaskinim b'kever binyan. Over there, we're speaking about the kever of a binyan that's on top of the karka, the shame, and therefore it's considered tolush. Since it's tolush, it's asa b'hana. Tashma kever chadash, a new kever that you it's in the ground. Mutter b'hana. If you don't use this mutter b'hana, hitel ba nefel. If you put a nefel in an asa b'hana, it's asa b'hana. Why is it asa b'hana? It's b'karka. Achanami b'kever binyan. We're not speaking about karka itself. We're speaking about something built above the ground. Tashma nimsa at oimer sholish kfaris. There's three types of kfaris. Keva hanimsa, a keva that is what? That you're digging in your backyard, all of a sudden you find a grave. Keva hayedua, one that you do know about. And keva hamazik es harabim, and a keva that's in a place that's mazik the rabbim. Keva hanimsa mutal of noisle, a keva that you find it's mutal to exhume and move. Pineu mekayim tahar. Once you clear it out, the place is tahar. Right? The place was tahar. Umuta b'hana, and you can have hana. Keva hayedua, one that was known. Asal of noisle, it's asa to exhume. And mekayim tameh, the place is tameh. The asa b'hana, and you can have hana from it. Keva mazik as a rabbim, mutal of noisle, since it's in a place that's not good for the rabbim, you can go ahead and exhume it. Pineu makam tahar. Once you clean it out, it's a makam tahar. The asa b'hana, but it's asa b'hana. Okay, so l'chayra you see over here that the keva from the last shaila it's asa b'hana, so you see the shmutz is asa b'hana. So how can they use the shmutz of Rav's kever? Achanami b'keva binyan. We're speaking about what? A keva binyan. Fred the Gemara of a keva nimsa, one that you found that makes mitzvah, the mighty mutal of noisai. Maybe Dilma makes mitzvah. Who you find it in your backyard? Maybe it's a mitzvah, and he's cleaning his makom. So how can you clean it out? Or makes mitzvah cleaning a koimoy. Shiny makes mitzvah the koil is slave. We would have known about it. There was a koil. Obviously, no one knew about the one in the backyard. There was no koil, but therefore it's not a mace mitzvah.